When we speak of love, we are usually speaking of something that can be lost, and that should already make us suspicious. Many people, after the ending of a relationship, speak of being heartbroken and naturally assume that their suffering has been caused by love itself, or by the other person who failed to return it, preserve it, or behave as expected. Yet what is actually injured in such moments is not love at all, but the ego's demand for control. The pain arises not because love was betrayed, but because a cherished image has been contradicted. The image of how another person was supposed to remain, respond, or belong. Love, in its true sense, does not fracture into resentment, nor does it transform into bitterness or hatred. These are the responses of a self that feels thwarted, denied, or powerless. A self that confuses possession with affection. For where love is present, there is no compulsion to dominate, no need to bind another to one's desires, and therefore no hostility that can survive its presence. Anything that disappears when conditions change was never love in the first place. It was an arrangement, a preference, a psychological convenience. What most people call love is a reaction, a response to pleasure, attention, safety, or agreement. But remove those conditions, change the behavior, disrupt the fantasy, withdraw the reward, and watch what happens. The so-called love evaporates. Now, if love vanishes the moment circumstances shift, then philosophically speaking, it does not belong to the same category as truth. It belongs to appetite, and this is where the confusion begins. Because real love, the only thing worthy of the word love, is not dependent on conditions at all. Unconditional love is not a higher version of ordinary love. It is not love plus effort, or love with more patience. It is something entirely different in nature. In fact, it may be closer to awareness than to emotion. What we usually call love is selective. It chooses, compares, measures, and evaluates. Think of how most relationships begin. Two people put on their best masks, present their best selves, and try very hard to be the character the other person wants, and then applauding each other for playing the correct role. Now, this arrangement can be very pleasant. It can feel intimate, exciting, even profound, but it contains a silent condition. Remain who I believe you are. The moment that condition is broken, when fear appears, when anger surfaces, when the mask slips, the warmth begins to cool. And this is not because anyone is cruel. It is because the relationship was never rooted in truth. It was rooted in expectation. You see, most of what we call love is actually a response to how another person makes us feel about ourselves. They confirm our identity. They stabilize our self-image. They reflect back the version of us we prefer to see. And when that reflection changes, we experience not heartbreak but disorientation, because the love was not directed at the person, but at the role they played in our inner narrative. This is why disappointment hurts so deeply. Not because the other person changed, but because the illusion collapsed. Unconditional love, by contrast, does not begin with behavior at all. It begins with seeing. To see someone, not as an extension of your needs, not as a solution to your loneliness, not as a character in your story, but as a living process, a movement, a mystery, a being who is unfinished. When you love conditionally, you relate to a fixed image. When you love unconditionally, you relate to change itself. And this requires something quite rare, the willingness to allow another human being to be exactly as unpredictable as you are. Unconditional love does not demand consistency. It does not require coherence. It does not insist that yesterday's promise become today's identity. It recognizes that human beings are not objects but events, and events cannot be owned. This is why unconditional love feels unsettling to the ego, because the ego wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants to know where it stands. We polish the ego and pretend we are far more enlightened than we actually are. And then, sooner or later, we get tired. The masks slip, the truth leaks out in the form of flaws, fears, things we thought we'd buried long ago. And this is the moment when conditional love says, no, I didn't sign up for that. Put the mask back on. But unconditional love is the love that exists once the performance ends. It isn't blind. It simply isn't based on the performance. It says, now I see you, the whole of you, the human of you, confused, imperfect, afraid, just like me, and I will not punish you for that. I will not turn away. Unconditional love is the ability to look at someone and see their essence, not merely their behavior in the moment. Most of our behavior is just conditioning. Patterns learned in childhood, defenses built from old wounds, echoes of things we didn't consciously choose. So when someone acts from fear, anger, jealousy, or confusion, their behavior is merely the surface of the wave. Unconditional love looks deeper and sees the vast ocean beneath it. It recognizes, I know you are more than the patterns you picked up along the way, and I am more than mine. Because unconditional love isn't based on perfection. It's based on truth. And truth, unlike fantasies, can actually support a relationship. This is why unconditional love feels so divine. It's the soul recognizing the soul. Most people think love is something you get from another person. But truly, love is an energy that flows out of you when there is enough space inside. When the mind is no longer cluttered with fear, insecurity, or the hunger for validation, unconditional love arises from fullness, not from lack. Conditional love says, I need you. Unconditional love says, I choose you because I am already whole. Unconditional love is not something you give to someone. It is something you awaken within yourself. When your consciousness expands beyond fear and beyond ego's need to control, love pours out naturally. Not even because the world deserves it, but because you recognize it as your nature. Like a flower doesn't need a reason to bloom, you don't need a reason to love. You can observe yourself. Notice the moments when love arises without a reason. Notice how natural it feels. And notice how free you become. For example, when you see a small puppy, ask yourself, do you require it to prove anything to you? Do you need it to behave properly? Do you demand that it be useful, impressive, or consistent? Of course not. In fact, its clumsiness, its mischief, its complete lack of self-awareness often make it even more endearing. And when it finally falls asleep curled up, defenseless, utterly unconcerned with who it should be, notice what arises in you. That quiet warmth, that soft, expansive feeling. No agenda, no expectation, no demand. Yes, that is the love I'm talking about. Love without conditions. Notice how effortless it is, how natural, how it does not require justification. And then notice something else. That feeling did not come from the puppy. It arose within you, which means it was never dependent on behavior in the first place. You begin to recognize that you are the very space in which love appears. Once this is clearly seen, the urgency to pursue what is called conditional love simply subsides. There is no longer any impulse to chase affection, no inclination to bargain for approval, no habit of weighing love in terms of exchange. And with this, a great deal of unnecessary suffering falls away. What remains is a simple clarity and a freedom that does not depend on outcomes. So imagine just for a moment what it would feel like to love without any thought of return, to love without saying, now what do I get out of this? To love as you breathe, as you blink, without effort, without planning, without demand. Can you feel how light that would be? Like setting down a burden you didn't even know you were carrying. To simply be with another human being, to delight in their presence. And let that be enough. But of course, that isn't how we're taught to love, is it? From the very beginning, we are trained to treat love like a contract. If you do this for me, then I will love you. If you behave this way, then you deserve my affection. If you don't, this love won't work out. And we play this game over and over, wondering all the while why love becomes such a weight. Why something so natural, so spontaneous, turns into anxiety, jealousy, and endless disappointment. It's because we've confused love with possession. We've mistaken it for a business deal, a bargain, a trade. But love, real love, is nothing of the kind. It is not a cage you build around another person. It is not a promise written in legal language. It is more like music. You don't listen to music because you want to hear the final chord. You listen because every note is the point. You don't dance to arrive at the last step. You dance because the movement itself is delightful. But of course, we don't usually allow it to be that simple, do we? Most people don't trust love unless it comes with guarantees. We want contracts and permanent insurance policies. But the moment you demand proof of love, you've already strangled it. Because love is like water. The harder you clutch it, the faster it slips through your fingers. It only stays when you let it flow. Our minds have a peculiar habit. We take something spontaneous and joyous, like simply enjoying one another's company, and we immediately try to make a plan out of it. Where is this going? How serious is this? What comes next? And so, the very act of trying to secure love is the act of making it insecure. You start wondering, will they always be here? Do they really care? What if they stop loving me tomorrow? And that anxiety poisons the whole thing. What began as the simple joy of being together becomes a dreadful performance. You must keep meeting expectations, checking boxes, fulfilling demands. And of course, nobody can keep that up forever. No one can live their life as a full-time caretaker of your happiness. It's simply too much to ask. But you see, we've been conditioned to think otherwise. Our culture conditions us with this idea that love must be defined, explained, and locked down. So we invent endless rules. This is love and this isn't. A real partner does this and never that. If you loved me, you would do anything for me. And so the fresh, playful feeling of love becomes a tangle of instructions. The dance is forgotten. The music is drowned out. What was once delight now tastes of obligation. It's rather tragic, really. We start with something as pure as a child's laughter, and we end with something as heavy as a courtroom trial. And all because we can't resist trying to trap it, to make it permanent, to force life itself to sit still and behave. So the whole affair becomes impossible, precisely because we make it so. It's as though you were watching the sunset and kept asking, yes, but when will it be completely dark? And in doing that, you've missed the whole show. In the same way,